Meanwhile, the two children watching TV suddenly stood up, mimicking the actions they saw on the screen. Sheng glanced over and noticed an animated superhero battling monsters, resembling a rip-off of the Ultraman series. The boy joyfully declared that the monster was about to be defeated, claiming the superhero's rage form was the strongest. The girl disagreed, insisting that the frost form was superior. This scene sparked a thought in Sheng. The children's debate over the strengths of different forms mirrored his own contemplation of integrating diverse Grandmaster wills. His eyes locked onto the cartoon on the TV, pondering the parallels between their discussion and his own journey of martial enlightenment. And Sheng's mind relentlessly replayed the scene where the rip-off Ultramans transformed between rage and frost, sparking a whirlwind of thoughts. To an onlooker, it might have seemed he was utterly engrossed in a children's cartoon. However, Sheng was, in fact, brainstorming the outline of his perfect Grandmaster path, which was beginning to emerge more clearly. Not long after, a young couple entered the noodle shop. The young man seemed familiar with the place, greeting the owner while ordering 4 bowls of noodles before sitting down with his girlfriend. He turned around to tell her that the food here was delicious. The girl nodded absently, putting down her phone while waiting for the food, a rare sight these days. Nonetheless, the young man, with a smile, shared that ever since he advanced to a second-level martial artist, his energy consumption had increased, necessitating a larger food intake. The girl seemed bored while waiting for the food, her gaze wandering to the only other customer in the shop. Observing his table filled with over a dozen empty noodle bowls, she commented to her boyfriend, pointing to Sheng, suggesting that he had an even larger appetite, perhaps indicating he was a high-level martial artist. She also noted that he was quite handsome. Hearing this, the young man glanced at Sheng but didn't say anything, that there was a hint of annoyance on his face. "I think we should tell the dude not to worry since our boy Sheng got enough wives already, and he's not interested in stealing your girl," the girl said casually to her boyfriend. Sheng, busy devouring his meal with a chicken leg in one hand and noodles in the other, was clearly unaware of their conversation. His mind was occupied with a whirlwind of thoughts, seemingly engrossed in what seemed like the 100th episode of a cartoon he had been watching for the last hour. Every time the rip-off Ultraman on the screen executed a finishing move, he paid close attention. There was no difference this time. Seeing the rip-off Ultraman use a technique resembling a circle, caught in the moment, Sheng suddenly stood up, momentarily stunned. An idea gradually took shape in Sheng's mind. The circle, being the most perfect form, also represented the outline of his Grandmaster's will. Now, a new question arose. What color should represent his martial path? If ice and fire symbolize blue and red respectively, and the recent acquisition of Shirwei's earth type should be yellow, then what color would suit him? Sheng faced a dilemma in choosing the right color. Suddenly, he thought of gray. Gray symbolizes mystery and the unknown, representing all possibilities to him. He envisioned his martial path to have a martial will that presides over all others, encompassing everything. Yet, he suddenly realized he might have been mistaken. Dominating all martial wills does not necessarily mean being above them. With his current level as a mere 6th-level martial artist, how could he possibly create a martial path more powerful than those of 11th-level martial artists? Recalling the wills of 3 powerful grandmasters, a spark, or perhaps a light bulb, goes off in his head. It was like sunlight piercing through dark clouds, and in an instant, he might have just gotten his answer. His sudden exclamation startled the couple behind him. The young man whispered to his girlfriend that the guy in front of them was not only engrossed in watching children's cartoons but also reacted excessively, probably a maniac or something. The girl nodded in agreement, losing any interest she might have had in the otherwise handsome Sheng. Suddenly, a poster on the wall caught the young man's attention. Upon closer inspection, the poster was about Sheng, the same photo people took while calling him the strongest freshman after breaking through the 7 divine martial towers. The young man pointed at the wall, unable to utter a complete sentence. His girlfriend, puzzled, looked at him and asked what was wrong. The young man's eyes widened instantly, his body tensed, and he looked as if he had seen something incredible. He exclaimed, that person is Sheng. By the time they looked up to search for Sheng, he had already left the noodle shop. Sheng returned to his dormitory and stood in front of the window at a time when the sun was at its most vibrant. He took a deep breath, summoning his psychic energy and internal strength, immersing his entire being in it. Bathed in the brilliant sunlight, the outline in his mind became rapidly clearer. He felt as though his whole being from the inside out became translucent. The scorching aura swept through Lu Xing's entire body, strengthening his flesh, bones, and even his psychic power. At this very moment, the impurities purged from his body significantly accelerated the progress of the second stage of his indestructible golden body. Even his psychic power was encompassed within this purifying scope, becoming ever more transparent. He felt as if he were immersed in the cosmos, floating in space, only to find himself plunging into water. Anyway, just as he pondered what was going on before him, the wills of 3 grandmasters materialized, taking human form within his consciousness and attacking each other. This left him somewhat bewildered. After all, possessing 3 distinct grandmaster wills was already impossible, let alone having these 3 battle each other. Yet, he knew he could not let this continue indefinitely. Sooner or later, the conflict among these wills would drive him to madness and death. Watching the chaotic battle unfold before him, he remained calm. After all 3 of them were once defeated by him. His small stature seemed almost comical before these 3 giants, but he still shouted at them, demanding their attention. Lu Sheng took a deep breath and raised his hand. Instantly, the entire consciousness space seemed to transform into a vortex in his palm. He solemnly told the 3 grandmaster wills that he, Lu Sheng, had founded the path of the perfect martial path, aiming for the 12th level. He vowed to accomplish what others could not, to break through the barriers others failed to overcome, and to master the powers that they could not control. With a roar, the sea of consciousness turned into a gray vortex that Lu Sheng absorbed. The gray light spread swiftly, encompassing all 3 battling grandmaster wills. Lu Sheng felt a tremendous force of resistance, but he roared again, insisting that they become the foundation of the perfect martial path, which should be their greatest honor. So why were they resisting? With another roar, Lu Sheng intensified his effort. Perhaps realizing that Lu Sheng was right, the 3 grandmaster wills rapidly contracted into a vortex and entered Lu Sheng's body. Things seemed to go very well. Before him, a circular ring appeared with 4 quadrants. The 3 grandmaster wills occupied one of each corner. The previously dull surface of the circular ring now revealed intricate lines dividing the ring into evenly sized grids. At the very bottom, the gray-colored sphere was Lu Sheng's own grandmaster's will. While Lu Sheng was engrossed in his newfound prowess, meanwhile, in the vice principal's office, Zhao was reviewing documents and suddenly looked up as if he felt he was being watched from a distance. With a low shout, he questioned who was there. His grandmaster's aura erupted, and he stood up as if facing a powerful enemy. Hearing the commotion, the secretary quickly ran into the room, asking if everything was all right. Zhao, with a stern face and furrowed brows, didn't answer. After a while, his expression slowly returned to normal. He told his secretary everything was fine but asked her to call Lu Sheng to his office. The secretary nodded and carefully closed the door behind her, thinking to herself that the vice principal had become increasingly sensitive ever since he jumped out of the window the other day. Inside the office, Jiao stared out the window, still shocked and puzzled by the sensation he had felt seconds ago. He wondered, was that the presence of a 7th-level psychic master? That power, which seemed to strike fear into his soul, was it just an illusion? Or what was it? Well, this was in fact the work of our boy Lu Sheng, who was unaware that even a slight release of his psychic force could cause such an incident. Standing on the balcony of his dormitory, his psychic power nearly enveloped the entire city. Since condensing his grandmaster's will, his psychic energy had significantly increased. Previously, he could only vaguely sense what was happening outside, but now he could clearly perceive everything within reach of his psychic power. So, he could see through everything. He was unsure if his psychic power had reached the 7th level, but that was not important to him at the moment. He was more eager to test his grandmaster's will and his perfect martial path. The next moment, within his mind, the circular ring spun. The ring rapidly shifts between the 3 grandmasters' wills. When the pointer landed on the wheel of Shui, Lu Sheng immediately emanated a steadfast aura, as if a colossal figure loomed behind him. Then, he employed the earth-breathing technique, lungs feet rooted to the ground, and an invisible force swiftly climbed up from beneath the earth, bolstering him. Suddenly, Lu Sheng made his move. A chunk of ground lifted off the ground and soared into the air as Lu Sheng shifted to the 2nd grandmaster's will. The ring turned again. Lu Sheng exhaled slowly, blowing out a visibly bone-chilling cold breeze with icicles and snowflakes materializing in the air. Then, transitioning to the water-breathing technique, the previously lifted ground shrank to a fraction of its size. It was then Lu Sheng discovered he could condense and concentrate his power. The ring spun once more. This time, Lu Sheng felt as if he had become the sun itself, especially after the integration of his own Grandmaster will, which made Ning's Grandmaster's will tenfold stronger. Looking at his right hand, Lu Sheng felt as if he had inexhaustible strength. He wondered if he were to use his full power now, could he possibly stand a chance against a great Grandmaster in his dream realm? Lu Sheng slowly dissipated the Grandmaster's will, musing that he shouldn't get ahead of himself. At that moment, Lu Sheng noticed two students outside his door pushing and shoving each other, seemingly in the midst of an argument. The two young men exchanged glances and gulped hard, neither daring to be the first to knock on the door. One of them said in tears, "This is like the castle of a demon lord." As they debated who should knock, a figure descended from the sky. They turned slowly as if facing a demon and stood frozen, hearing Lu Sheng asking if they were looking for him. They didn't know how to respond, their fear rendering them nearly paralyzed. The two seniors, who initially wanted to use this opportunity for a close encounter with the notorious demon lord Lu Sheng, found themselves standing straight and saluting him as if reporting to a superior officer. It turned out they had been sent by the secretary to summon Lu Sheng to the vice principal's office. After relaying the message, they quickly ran off. Before arriving here, they were excited to have a close encounter with Lu Sheng. However, neither of them had anticipated to see what happened next. Just as they arrived in front of his dormitory, they were shocked to see Lu Sheng in the middle of what they could only describe as demolishing his house. More precisely, he was lifting the ground and emitting an aura that was freezing one moment and scorching the next. Terrified, they dared not knock and quickly fled after delivering their message, vowing never to return. Shortly after, Lu Sheng arrived at the vice principal's office. Zhao poured him a cup of tea and then proceeded to inform him of several matters. The first was the reward of sweeping and breaking the record for all of the 7 divine martial towers, which amounts to 75,000 academic credits. Zhao was visibly excited about this, but Lu Sheng appeared remarkably calm. Lu Sheng listened attentively, but when Zhao stopped speaking and didn't continue, Lu Sheng couldn't help but ask if that was all. Internally, Lu Sheng might have been wondering if that was all the reward he would get, questioning if there wasn't anything more. Seeing Lu Sheng's expression, Zhao was taken aback and then loudly questioned if Lu Sheng was unaware of the significance of 75,000 academic credits. Lu Sheng did not respond, prompting Zhao to explain that the amount was sufficient for someone to graduate 150 times. Lu Sheng looked at him somewhat helplessly, questioning why he would need to graduate so many times. Zhao was momentarily speechless but then realized that Lu Sheng, having recently enrolled, might not be familiar with the campus's exchange. He silently watched as he instructed Lu Sheng to open the campus forum upon accessing his phone. Lu Sheng discovered the section where extra academic credits could be exchanged for items. For instance, a level 4 beast blood required only 5 credits, and the most expensive level 5 melee weapon cost less than 100. Some more expensive items included a week of guidance from a Grandmaster level instructor, and to his surprise, a level 6 beast marrow astonishingly cost 1,000 credits. Seeing this, Lu Sheng's interest was piqued. Zhao, amused, watched him and lifted his teacup, thinking to himself that now the young man understood the value of academic credits. However, he could not have anticipated the question Lu Sheng was about to ask next. Lu Sheng's question about the availability of level 7 beast marrow caught him off guard, causing him to spit out his tea in surprise. Standing up abruptly, he looked at Lu Sheng in astonishment, questioning if Lu Sheng was already in need of such an advanced item. Upon observing Lu Sheng's demeanor, he speculated whether Lu Sheng was preparing to advance to the Grandmaster level. Lu Sheng, releasing his aura, showcased his own Grandmaster will. Zhao gulped, watching intently as Lu Sheng nodded, mentioning he was only a bit short on blood energy level. In fact, Lu Sheng felt his blood energy level was nearly sufficient, but he was aiming for perfection. He preferred to wait until the second stage of his indestructible golden body was fully complete before finally advancing to that of the 7th level Grandmaster. To do that, he would need a lot of high-level beast marrows. As it turned out, the blood energy level of a Grandmaster and that of an ordinary martial artist are worlds apart, as a Grandmaster's body is refined through martial will. Zhao's gaze was filled with complexity. The leap from 6th level to 7th was a barrier that had halted many, as reaching Grandmaster status wasn't something that could be achieved through supplements and resources alone. The young man before him, at just 18, had already formed his own Grandmaster will. Taking a deep breath, Zhao sat down and then informed Lu Sheng that level 7 beast marrow was extremely rare, and the process to acquire it was complicated. Even the military and the Divine Martial University had a difficult time acquiring it. When asked why, Jiao explained that the blood and cells of level 7 beasts contained what they referred to as negative factors in vast quantities, which current technology levels couldn't completely eliminate. Those of insufficient strength who consumed it risked being overwhelmed by the residual consciousness within. Moreover, even grandmasters rarely used it, just to prove how dangerous it is. Hearing this, Sheng felt somewhat disappointed, thinking he might have to settle for level 6 beast marrow instead. After deducting the credits needed for graduation, he could purchase about 70 vials, though he found this amount somewhat lacking. Zhao internally screamed, only to recall that he had only used 10 vials of beast marrow during his time as a grandmaster. Calming himself, Jiao then presented him with 2 folders, revealing the second piece of news. The martial saint had agreed to take Sheng as a student. Whether Sheng could become an official disciple would depend on passing a certain test. Sheng took the folders and read the documents inside, which stated that his task was to become the champion of the National College Martial Arts competition. Sheng was momentarily taken aback since no one in the 7 divine martial universities could match him. Why should he participate in this competition in the first place? The vice principal seemed to understand his confusion and adjusted his glasses before explaining. Although Sheng had no competitors among the universities, the martial arts competition not only included all college students but also disciples from martial arts schools under 30 years old across the nation. Some are owned by great grandmasters, and additionally, this also includes the disciples from the martial arts schools of the other 2 martial saints. Sheng pondered, realizing he would likely face the successors of martial saints. Zhao nodded, further explaining that the other 2 martial arts schools were filled with prodigies, personally selected and meticulously trained by martial saints from a young age, making them far more powerful than those educated in schools with the age limit set below 30. The competition promised to be very challenging. This made Sheng recall the scene he had seen in his life record in the dream realm. It turned out that it was this very competition that led him to kill one of the disciples of the martial saint. He still wondered what caused him to do it. Nonetheless, he then opened the second folder. The vice principal added that there was only one chance, but Sheng had the choice to complete either one of the tasks from the 2 folders. Sheng was surprised to see what was written on the letter. As it turned out, the second folder contained a letter that required him to complete an SSS-level mission. Sheng continued reading through the detailed information in the folder, absorbing the intricacies of the mission. He noted the description of the target, Lin Yi, a 5th-level martial artist with a notorious background filled with criminal activities and violence. The absence of rewards for completing the mission puzzled him, especially considering the relatively low level of the target. He couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. As he delved deeper into the dossier, Sheng uncovered the true challenge of the mission. While eliminating Lin Yi himself might not be overly difficult, the real challenge lay in the powerful family background behind him. Lin Yi's father was a 7th-level grandmaster affiliated with the Extreme Path Martial Arts School, a connection that granted him significant influence and protection. Moreover, Lin Yi's sister, Lin Su, was married to martial saint Zhao Ji, elevating their status even further within the martial arts community. The dossier detailed the extensive list of crimes committed by Lin Yi and his father, crimes that warranted severe punishment many times over. However, their influence shielded them from facing any real consequences. This mission was a response to a particularly egregious incident where Lin Yi and his father had brutally abused and killed the daughters of a factory worker. Faced with the man's desperate plea for justice, the martial saint, also the principal of the university, decided to incorporate the mission to eliminate Lin Yi into the academic system. Despite the severity of the situation, Sheng couldn't help but question why direct action hadn't been taken by the martial saint or why a 7th-level grandmaster hadn't been assigned to the mission. It seemed unusual for such a significant matter to be delegated to the academic mission system, especially with the risks involved. Zhao, noticing Sheng's confusion, adjusted his glasses and sighed deeply as he explained the rationale behind the mission. It was a response to the failure of conventional justice and a recognition of the limitations within the existing system. By incorporating the mission into the academic structure, the martial saint aimed to address the issue while also safeguarding students from inadvertently accepting it. As Sheng processed this information, he realized the gravity of the situation he was facing. It wasn't just a mission to eliminate a target, it was a test of his moral compass, his courage, and his willingness to confront injustice, even in the face of formidable adversaries. With a newfound understanding of the mission's significance, Sheng prepared himself for the challenges that lay ahead, knowing that his actions could have far-reaching consequences within the martial arts community. Sheng's query about the absence of rewards for the mission and the implications of such a decision led Vice Principal Zhao to adopt a serious demeanor. He cautioned Sheng to tread carefully, emphasizing the profound repercussions that could arise from actions involving martial saints. Zhao stressed the potential chaos that could ensue from the intervention of such powerful beings, highlighting the destructive impact of conflicts between martial saints on cities and regions. The gravity of the situation hung in the air as Zhao awaited Sheng's response, fully aware of the weight of the decision that lay before him. Sheng, however, appeared unperturbed by the dawning prospect. Instead of showing fear, he seemed more puzzled than anything else, prompting Zhao to consider the young man's demeanor thoughtfully. Acknowledging Sheng's potential concerns, Zhao proceeded to unveil the true intentions behind the mission and the subsequent discussion. He affirmed that while Yin Yu wielded significant influence through his connections with a martial arts school and a martial saint, Sheng himself possessed formidable backing from the Seventh Divine Martial University and a martial saint. Zhao directed Sheng's attention to the folders on the desk, symbolizing the vast opportunities and support that came with being a direct disciple of a martial saint. With a composed demeanor, Sheng grasped the significance of his position and the resources at his disposal. He demonstrated a confidence that belied his age, asserting that even potential adversaries would hesitate to confront him directly. In a decisive move, Sheng requested the address of the factory worker, indicating his readiness to undertake the mission. Observing Sheng's departure, Zhao's expression betrayed a hint of hesitation, perhaps reflecting the weight of the decisions made and the unspoken complexities of the situation. Shortly after Sheng left, a cloaked figure entered the room, exuding an air of authority tinged with displeasure. Standing behind Zhao, the newcomer criticized Zhao for divulging too much information, hinting at the delicacy and secrecy surrounding their discussions. As the scene unfolded, the layers of intrigue and tension deepened, underscoring the intricate dynamics at play within the martial arts world and the weight of the decisions faced by its key players. Zhao's demeanor reflected a mix of emotions as he pondered the implications of the conversation. He understood the underlying message conveyed by the cloaked figure, acknowledging the high stakes involved in the decisions Sheng faced. Losing a talented individual like Sheng would be a significant loss for the institution, yet the standards set by the martial saints were uncompromising. The cloaked figure's smirk hinted at a deeper understanding of the situation, emphasizing the stringent criteria for identifying true prodigies. Passing the test set by the martial saints was the ultimate validation of one's potential, far surpassing mere talent or early achievements. As Sheng navigated the campus, he realized the subtleties embedded in Zhao's words. While presented with two apparent choices, the true path forward seemed clear. Zhao's inclination towards the second option, despite its apparent simplicity, hinted at its strategic significance. It was a veiled directive towards a predetermined outcome, nudging Sheng towards a specific course of action. Despite the allure of the second mission's straightforward objective, Sheng saw through the facade. Eliminating a level 5 martial artist might be within his capabilities, but the repercussions of such an act would be far-reaching. It would inevitably draw the ire of powerful forces aligned with Lin Yi, potentially leading to entanglement with Tan Zhongyu's faction for protection. Contemplating the view of the martial saint tower, Sheng couldn't shake off the suspicion that Tan Zhongyu might be orchestrating events behind the scenes, manipulating his future for his own ends. However, fueled by a sense of justice and empathy for the victims of Lin Yi and his father's atrocities, Sheng resolved to deliver justice and closure to those affected. Returning to his dormitory, Sheng reaffirmed his commitment to see through his mission, guided by his own principles rather than being swayed by external influences. Despite the complexities and uncertainties ahead, he remained determined to carve out his own path, untethered by the agendas of others. After a few days, in Nanping city suburbs, several police vehicles surrounded an old building, sealing the entire area. A female officer, seemingly the chief officer, redirected all the policemen to hurry up and block all the surroundings. The atmosphere was quite tense. This officer was Xiao Yeren, deputy chief of Nanping City Police Headquarters. Holding a communication device in her hand, she contacted the snipers surveying several nearby buildings to assess the situation inside the building and immediately report back. Just then, a young officer approached Yeren and consoled her not to worry, as there were several martial experts at rank 6 from the Dragon capital involved in this operation. There is even one expert from the top 300 hunters list, and along with President Qian's intervention, they would be able to handle a rank 7 monster with ease. Yaren sighed, her face still filled with worry. She knew there was a rank 6 monster inside the building, and the requirement for becoming one of the top 300 hunters was to slay 10 rank 6 monsters. Despite all these preparations, Yaren could not help but feel something wrong. But she shrugged it off, saying she might be overthinking. Just then, Yaren heard a voice. A taxi approached the sealed area. While getting out of the taxi, the driver warned Lu Sheng to take care of this desolate region and questioned why there were this many police vehicles in the vicinity. Lu Sheng did not answer and left the taxi. Suddenly, several officers swiftly approached the taxi, pointing at Lu Sheng as he exited the car, urging him to hurry back in and vacate the area. The deputy chief also approached, informing him that the area ahead was sealed off. Lu Sheng, calm and collected, retrieved a mission credential from his pocket. The deputy chief examined it carefully, surprised to find it was issued by the 7th Divine Martial University. What startled her more was that they had assigned this mission to a freshman. She regarded Lu Sheng with a skeptical gaze, pondering why the university would entrust such a dangerous mission to a newcomer. Lu Sheng merely smiled, offering little explanation beyond hinting that his circumstances were unique. He reclaimed the mission credential, a simple action that sent a chill down her spine as she realized he had silently retrieved it without her notice. Her newfound respect for Lu Sheng grew as she contemplated the feat as a 4th-level martial artist herself. She was astonished that someone could retrieve an item from her hand without her awareness, despite being several meters away and without budging from his spot. Clearly, this young man was no ordinary individual. As Lu Sheng pressed forward, her tone shifted, becoming more respectful as she informed him that others had already entered the building, including several peak 6-level martial artists and a top-ranked hunter within the top 300 on the hunter list. She estimated that the situation would likely be resolved swiftly. Lu Sheng nodded, acknowledging his slight tardiness but showing little concern. He then turned to her with a query about the hunter's list. The deputy chief was somewhat surprised by his unfamiliarity with the concept. She patiently explained that the hunter's list was a ranking system established by the Martial Arts Association specifically for martial artists who undertake bounty tasks. Before she could finish her sentence, she noticed Lu Sheng smiling and muttering something to himself, seemingly pleased that his trip wasn't in vain. As Lu Sheng continued forward, a few younger officers attempted to stop him, insisting that he wasn't needed inside anymore. Suddenly, a deafening explosion echoed from within the abandoned building. The deputy chief swiftly turned around, grabbing her radio and issuing urgent commands for all units to be on high alert. Shortly after, 3 figures emerged from a cloud of dust, leaping down as if fleeing from something. They appeared terrified and disheveled, as if being chased by something horrifying. In a startling turn of events, several thick red vines shot out, ensnaring the slowest person and swiftly dragging him back. His eyes filled with fear, his screams of terror and despair fading as he was pulled away, pleading for help. The officers were stunned by the unfolding scene. The deputy chief was the first to react, shouting into her radio to open fire. The officers, regaining their composure, loaded their weapons, and a barrage of gunfire erupted, aimed at the massive vines. The 2 disheveled figures crashed to the ground, and she immediately rushed over to check on them, calling for medical assistance. One of them, a robust middle-aged man, furiously grabbed her by the collar, questioning the accuracy of her intelligence. Despite his injuries, his face still bore the expression of lingering fear, as he shouted that the beast inside was not level 6 but level 7. Upon hearing this revelation, her face turned pale as she realized the situation exceeded the capabilities of their local armed forces. She was about to contact the military district when Lu Sheng intervened, shaking his head to indicate it wasn't necessary yet. With a calm demeanor, Lu Sheng suggested giving him a chance to try first. Turning towards the building, he casually mentioned that once it was over, they should remember to apply for a mission-level adjustment. He instructed everyone to take a coffee break, stating he only needed 5 minutes. Amidst the astonished gazes of everyone present, Lu Sheng's figure suddenly vanished, leaving them in disbelief. The middle-aged man caught a glimpse of Lu Sheng's movement and turned around just in time to see Lu Sheng already on the rooftop of the building. The 2 observers couldn't comprehend the speed at which Lu Sheng moved. One of them stood with their jaw wide open, questioning who exactly this person was. As soon as Lu Sheng entered the abandoned building, he was struck by a strong foul smell, reminiscent of dead cattle or sheep left to rot for days under the sun. He recalled encountering this scent once before during the military star selection in the Eastern Military District, but it was never as awful as now. Utilizing his psychic energy, Sheng swiftly pinpointed the location of the beast. Descending to the floor, he pushed open the gate. The stench was most potent here, but what drew his attention was the hideous monster in front of him. It had a mouth filled with sharp, dense teeth, several vine-like limbs, and its tongue wrapped around a martial artist who appeared lifeless, the same individual pulled back by the vines earlier. The martial artist's face, twisted in terror, stared directly at Sheng, eyes wide open amidst several corpses. Narrowing his eyes, Sheng recognized the creature before him. The beast was chewing on the martial artist before spitting him out. Sheng surveyed the scene, sighing deeply as he solemnly promised each of the fallen that he would ensure this beast met its end. Cracking his neck and wrist with fury in his eyes, Sheng unleashed a terrifying force emanating from his body. The monster, after noticing Sheng, turned its gaze towards him, ready to attack any time. It was a huge red monster with a long tongue and several dozen eyes over his head. Sheng activated his stellar will. Knowing the overall strength of such a monster should be between rank 5 and 6, he was confident in taking it down. But he still could not understand how such a monster able to reach in middle of Dragon City can, and now it had reached rank 7 after consuming several martial artists. Suddenly the monster raised its huge hand, roaring. He tried to stomp Sheng under its hand. But Sheng immediately dodged its attack while attacked the monster's hand, severely damaging it. The monster wailed in pain. Sheng appeared near the worm monster out of nowhere. "What a noisy worm," he commented while removing the dust from his clothes. The angry monster let a huge roar, shaking the whole building, and suddenly extended its hand to attack Sheng. But to its surprise, Sheng dodged the strike, appearing right beside its arm. "Can you a little better?" he taunted the monster. The monster, enraged, released green acidic fluid from his mouth, attacking Sheng. But he again disappeared without a trace, leaving the monster boggled. Appearing in the midair, Sheng started gathering energy around his fist and also activated the Valkyrie Cold Sparrow will, increasing the attack power by many folds. His eyes flashed with bluish aura. "You can start shaking in fear now," he commented. Right this instant, on the outside, several martial artists who escaped from the worm monster were in debate with the police chief. The burly man, taken aback, after hearing that Sheng was still a student from 7th St. Martial University, so he asked for clarification. After the chief revealed that she looked his information on the student ID card. Sweat poured down from the burly man's face. He could not fathom how a student could be this fast that even he, a rank 6 martial artist, could not trace. He could only wonder about Sheng's background. The man in purple suit urged the chief to write report back to Martial Arts Association and military headquarters. In case the monster gets angry and leave the premises, it will cause chaos throughout the city, and it can also devour people to become stronger. The chief took out her phone to contact the respective departments. Just then a huge bang came out from the building along with a wave of ominous energy. The energy wave hit this group of martial artists, pushing them back. Sweat poured down their faces. They could only wonder what had happened inside the building. At this moment, inside the building, the huge monster let out a shriek in pain and fell down to his face, destroying the ground underneath. Green blood poured out from its mouth as it wailed in pain. Sheng stepped up and grabbed one of its arm and started revolving the monster in circle with his monstrous strength, and finally slammed the monster on the ground, creating a huge blast. Due to continuous single side beating from Sheng, the monster died after getting slammed on the ground. Outside the building, the martial artists were still staring at the building, curious about the situation inside. Suddenly the top of the building blew off. The monster body came out from the building. The martial artist backed away in fear, and the man in purple suggested everyone to take cover. Just as they were anticipating, the huge monster body came crashing down on ground in front of them. The burly man in stuttering voice declared, "The monster's death." The chief officer could not believe the scene in front of her eyes. Sheng just entered the building, and it's been only 4 minutes, and he had already defeated the monster. Just then, Sheng suddenly appeared before the chief, asking her to adjust the mission difficulty according to the monster's rank. The man in purple bowed down to Sheng, thanking him for slaying the worm monster, and told him that after processing the monster's materials, all the profits will be sent directly to Sheng's account. His eyes were filled with awe and fear. Despite facing such a monster, Sheng's expression remained calm, which led to respect for this young man. Sheng calmly denied and asked the officials to distribute the profits to the families of the ones who have perished. It will be enough for them to survive for the rest of their lives. The man in purple, hearing Lu Sheng's gracious words, thanked him. Turning to the police chief, Lu Sheng asked her to call a cab for him to take him to the train station. But the police chief offered to take him there herself. Lu Sheng, with a gracious smile, thanked and accepted her offer. Seeing Lu Sheng's cheerful smile, the officer blushed and started fantasizing about Lu Sheng, having weird ideas. Hiding her red face with hands, she started mumbling to herself. Lu Sheng could not help but ask what is wrong with her. Looking at the monster body, he could not help but feel strange as how a rank 7 monster break through the front line and end up in a small city like Nanping. Although monsters had infiltrated the city several times before, they were pretty weak. Because the strong monsters could not pass through the front line guarded by martial arts association and military. He wondered there might be a hidden scheme behind the scenes.